So few people in the city have any idea about what's going on in the rest of the country.
Lots of media inside Tripoli saying everything is okay, everything is ordinary. It looks ordinary at daytime, but I told you, people here are living by fear.
The weaknesses of both sides, coupled with the terrible infrastructural problems of Libya, mean that chaos reigns. Food shortages, medical shortages, civilians fleeing towns in terror, destinations unknown. This is how failed states happen. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, Tony Bertley joins me now from AlJazeera, which is under rebel control. Tony, first of all, tell us what you're hearing about the fighting which has been going on in Bin Jawad and Ras Lanuf.
Well, as you said earlier, it seems like the pro-Gaddafi forces have taken back Bin Jawad after some very heavy fighting. We understand sort of 20 to 30 casualties dead, that is, and many more wounded. So it's very difficult to get an independent corroboration, but that's what we're hearing at the moment. And also, you know, Ras Lanuf has become this place where it's known as Bomb Alley, because nearly every day you get the Libyan Air Force coming over, dropping bombs, and they're getting closer to the populated areas, if you like, the ones that remain. So it is increasing, it is intensifying, but it is still difficult to get, you know, a true idea about and a clear picture about what is happening and why.
But what is the mood amongst the people you're with there? Because when they hear of the fighting and losing control of areas that they had a foothold in, that must be, you know, very distressing and depressing for them.
Well, most people actually are very, very positive and very kind of forward-looking, because if something like that is purely a setback for these people, there is a reason for them. They were saying, as far as Bin Jawad was concerned, that basically Gaddafi's forces were using the civilian population as a human shield, and that's why they were not progressing. Now they say they withdrew because of that situation. Now, you ask the question is, if they can get held up in somewhere like Bin Jawad, what would happen further down the road where Gaddafi's stronghold is at Sirte, where 4,000 heavily armed, well-trained guys are there with high-tech weaponry. So, you know, it depends on who you believe, and stories change in a matter of kilometres in this country.
But is there any concern that Gaddafi's forces haven't unleashed their full power yet, and what would happen if they did?
I think there's a realisation from one or two people I've spoken to, but the overwhelming majority, I think, have no idea. They are carried away in this wave of euphoria that they're going to liberate their country. They've answered the call to arms, and they've got those arms. Whether or not that they can use them is another matter entirely. They've got this kind of gung-ho mentality where they're firing wildly into the air, wasting ammunition, and also putting lives at risk by their actions. So I don't think they fully understand it. There are some hardcore elements, of course, who are the upper echelons, the front echelons, if you like, who are doing the fighting. They are a little bit better equipped, and perhaps they know. But people further back think it's a matter of time before those, you know, heavy weapons and those heavy units are brought into play in this conflict.
And you were talking about Ras Lanuf a little earlier on. There's a great deal of worry about what would happen if the gas facilities there were bombed by either Gaddafi's forces or the other side.
Well, it would be an absolute disaster. If you're dealing with a rational man, probably wouldn't come into it. But as everyone says here, he's crazy and he's capable of doing anything. So, you know, if that plant was hit, it's got something like 15,000 metric tons of highly toxic, volatile gas. And they say a minimum of 15-kilometre radius, everything within that would die. So it is pretty extreme. They've got lots of installations like this. They feel that if he's losing and he's on the way out, that he could, in a final act of retribution, unleash the Air Force to attack. And that's a worry. That's the most worry. I mean, the Air Force is the main worry for the people here. Take that out of the equation and they would feel a lot happier.
Pretty scary stuff. Tony, thanks very much for that. Tony Bertley in AlJazeera there. Well, as the world continues to debate whether to impose a no-fly zone on Libya, the European Union's Foreign Affairs chief has warned that the world must be very clear on what that actually means.
Something that the Secretary-General of the Arab League said to my delegation to visit him yesterday is that we have to define what we mean, because a no-fly zone, by definition, means different things to different people. And so ensuring that whatever is done can be done properly is something I think this House would be very keen to see.
To Egypt now, and the Prosecutor General has launched an investigation into clashes between Muslims and Christians, which have killed at least 11 people. More than 1,000 Coptic Christians were protesting against the torching of a church when violence broke out. The country's ruling military council has vowed to rebuild the church and prosecute those responsible. The Taliban has claimed responsibility for a suicide attack that's killed at least 37 people in northwest Pakistan. The victims were part of a funeral procession attended by anti-Taliban fighters near Peshawar. Our correspondent Kamal Haider sent this update from Islamabad.
A lone suicide bomber targets a funeral prayer, that funeral prayer for the wife of one of the leaders of the Peace Committee. The Peace Committee, it should be remembered, is the voluntary force that has been helping the government against the Pakistani Taliban. The Pakistani Taliban claiming responsibility for the attack when one of their suicide bombers penetrated a funeral prayer where hundreds of people had gathered, and the government now confirming that at least 37 people were killed, many more were wounded. The wounded rushed to the hospitals in Peshawar, and in the meantime, the Peace Committee issuing its own statement asking the government to help it in this particular hour, and also saying at the same time that if the government was unable to provide that help, that they would have no other choice but to join the other side.
There's more to come on Al Jazeera, including the latest from Yemen, where at least one person has died after security forces attacked protesters outside Sana'a University. And why sorry seems to be the hardest word to say in the Philippines. Stay with us.
As the clouds roll in across the Mediterranean, you'll still find it easy to drift away.
Welcome back. Well, across Australia, especially the Northern Territory, we're still looking at some very heavy rain shower activity, and that is pushing now into the northern parts of Queensland. If you remember, we saw some incredible flooding across Queensland over the last several weeks. More flooding could be a potential. We are looking at flood warnings and watches in effect right now with all of this rain shower activity pushing through. As you can see on the forecast map, it is quite excessive, and we are going to be seeing this in place still over the next couple of days. Down towards the south, we have a frontal boundary right here that is now pushing through Melbourne. You can see the temperature is dropping down to about 22, but Sydney as well as Brisbane is looking about 28 degrees and sunny skies for them over the next couple of days. Well, a major snowstorm is pushing into the northeastern part of the United States. We had a previous one dumping loads of snow in parts of Canada as well as Newfoundland. Now you can see the storm is pushing up towards the northeast. Along with it, we're going to be seeing some heavy rain showers across the eastern seaboard, anywhere from Washington all the way down to Miami, and more heavy snow not only for Montreal, Quebec City, as well as Ottawa over the next couple of days. And out here towards the northwest, we're looking at some very heavy rain showers and some rain as well down towards the south and parts of San Francisco. Temperatures for Dallas about 20 and Denver 20 as well.
Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
Afghanistan is faced with a huge challenge.
Relations have gone really sour between us and our allies.
We have inflicted considerable damage on the enemy.
The people who make international headlines.
Ultimately, the truth will out.
They want to stop this publication of information that embarrasses them.
Make time for Sir David Frost.